We're just on a Colleen Hoover roll today. Hi guys, it's Ab and welcome back to Book It. So today we're going to be discussing Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Oh my gosh, look at all the blue. And we are going to be talking about this because this was the second book I've ever read by Colleen Hoover. The first book was Verity. And this book, French Kiss, beautiful as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on in. This was a love story written by Colleen Hoover and became very popular online, but it was not as popular as It Ends With Us. This is about Miles, who is a pilot and has a best friend with a sister named Tate. Tate is studying because she's in school, and she moves in across the hallway, and the two of them start a forbidden love because since he is best friends with her brother, they have that unspoken bro code rule where it's like, you can't sleep with my sister, you know? I feel like every guy has that, but then they end up doing it anyway. So as we go through the book, we learn that Miles has a very dark backstory, and we start to unravel that and learn that the way he is. So when they first meet, he's very standoffish. He's basically an asshole, and she's really not into him as much as he thinks that she should be. They do start a very sexual relationship, and then they end up getting together here and there. She ends up staying at his apartment. He ends up coming to her house, her apartment, because since she moved in with her brother, and her brother and him are both pilots, they often fly certain routes, and it's very easy for him to get a hold of her brother's going to be here until this day because of it, because he's a pilot. So they begin this relationship. It is strictly sexual. He does not want to call her his girlfriend. They are not dating. They are not anything other. And they also want to keep it from his best friend, her brother, to prevent this awkwardness that will come along with it. She says she wasn't looking for anything. She was including a relationship, and he wanted nothing to do with it at all. But they did have a very strong attraction towards one another. So I'm trying to figure out how to bounce around with this. So let's just talk about the actual themselves. So we do realize that Miles has a very dark backstory where he was in love with a girl named Rachel, and they were high school sweethearts turned into they were going to grow up, get married, have babies, all this amazing things. And we learned here and there that she's he's still hung up on Rachel. He's a very attractive guy, but his friends make fun of him because he never has hooked up with anybody other than her, and he doesn't talk about girls at all. They just don't talk about girls in their friend group. And then when he starts sleeping with Tate, she can kind of see that he's standoffish on certain things, and he just doesn't, you can just tell that he's still hung up on another girl. So they end up becoming very emotionally involved with one another. Tate does. She obviously falls in love with him, and he starts to really love her, but he cannot seem to fully trust himself around her. Which we then later on learn that he did, want to marry Rachel. They ended up getting pregnant when they were very young and having a baby. So this was definitely a big spoiler for the whole last part of the book. But basically he was driving home one night in the rain, and they were coming home from the hospital. It was their first night as a couple, and he went off a bridge, and the baby and Rachel drowned, and they died, and he never was able to forgive himself. He never allowed himself to move on. He never allowed himself to be happy because of what he did. So Tate has a heart-to-heart with him and is this is not your fault. This is not all on you. It was an accident. You didn't mean for it to happen. You need to let this be a reminder. But something that really kind of ticked me off this entire book was, before we know why Miles acts this way, he basically starts treating Tate like shit. He's very just standoffish unless he wants to have sex with her. He doesn't like her talking to any other guys. He doesn't like her going out. He doesn't, all this other stuff, but he's very standoffish, but he doesn't want to pursue a relationship with her even after she talks to him about it. So basically I spent the majority of this book just wanting Tate to stand up for herself. I wanted her to say you can't talk to me that way, or something like that. But like, she never does, because she has no spinal cord. And then Miles is one of those characters where it's like, you want to hate him because you're like, ugh, like if a man ever talked to me like that, like I'd kill him. But at the same time, you love him because you feel bad. You know, it's like one of those things where like, oh, poor Miles, like, you know, and you want to give him a hug. But there were so many scenes that like I just felt bad for him when he was younger and was going through all these hard times. But that didn't give him the excuse to treat Tate the way that he did. When it comes to Spicy, you can see there's a lot of dark tabs. This was probably the most sexual book I've ever read by Colleen Hoover. Because there was a lot, like literally there was so much. Because the book was basically just built on a relationship of sex, which is fine, you know, whatever. Oh, my notes say there are so many sex scenes where they're just hooking up and it was spicy, which was very different for a Colleen Hoover book because other than Verity, I have yet to read a book with this much spice. Good for you, girl. Okay. But here's something that like else I really want to talk about in this. So this is the cover of the book. So you're like, oh, cute, like ugly love, cool. But then you like, after you read the book and like you finish it and you learn about Rachel and everything, you see these little air bubbles and it makes you so sad. Like, it's just one of those hidden things. Like, it kind of was the same with Verity. I have Verity right here. It was like, here's them like walking at like the daughter walking on like the boat and like, you know, it's like one of those things. Like, it's just how her books are set up. But like, the bubbles. Okay, sorry. But no, so I did have two favorite quotes for this. One was one of my favorite quotes was, when life gives you lemons, make sure you know who wow, okay. When life gives you lemons, make sure you know whose eyes you need to squeeze them in. I just really like that because everyone says like, you know, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And then there's some people like, when life gives you lemons, make orange juice. Ho, 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 I'm so funny. Ugh. But that one's just kind of funny because it's like, who do you have to like go mess up? And then this was like, I put it as my least favorite quote because it made me actually cry like while I was reading it, which is when it's so popular too. It's when Miles and Tate are hooking up after he had just told her all this stuff about his ex and they were very emotional with one another and he just really like wanted her. As they're in the middle of hooking up, he says, "Oh God, Rachel," and he then goes on to apologize to her many times, and she just tells him like, just finish, like just do your shit, so I can leave, which is so sad. And like I like literally in that moment, I hated Miles, but I also felt so bad for him, and all I wanted to do was give him a hug because that's just so like it's so messed up and that hurts. But yeah, overall I say Ugly Love was a 4 out of 5. Yeah, I don't hand out 5 out of 5s often, so I say this is a 4 out of 5. And The Smut was also a 4 out of 5. It was great. It was beautiful. I recommend this book whenever someone's like, oh, I read Verity, I read it Into Us. I always go, have you read Ugly Love? Because you haven't, this is like the next one to read. It's very sad. I wish Tate had some sort of a backbone. Her brother does end up finding out about them like later on, but like Brendan, he don't really give a shit. Like, it's whatever, it's fine. But that's basically it. Sorry, I'm like yawning. I'm like so tired right now. But yeah, that's basically it for Ugly Love. I think I only have a few more Colleen Hoover books to like go over. I've only read, other than these two, and then I've already done a video on Confess and Reminders of Him. I had to do a video on It Ends With Us, but I don't have it. That one's in New York right now with my best friend. And then I'm going to do one on November 9th. But then other than that, I haven't read any other Colleen Hoover books recently. I don't know. I heard that like Layla was good and Hopeless, but I just haven't had the chance to go pick them up yet or read them. And I have a very long TBR list right now. Plus I have a lot of books I still need to make videos on. I have a lot going on. But yes, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and then, let me know down below what you thought. And then you can also always go see some of my other videos that I have as well. And that's it. Until next time. Bye.